The video starts with Case landing a clean kick, followed by a series of sharp punches that send his opponent staggering backward. He effortlessly blocks every counterattack, making the other fighter look helpless. With one final, powerful strike, Case launches his opponent across the ring, forcing the referee to call for a break. Back in his corner, Case questions why the fight needs to go the distance. His trainer explains that if he keeps finishing matches too quickly, no one will want to face him. But when the next round begins, Case ignores the advice. He locks his opponent's arm, forcing a quick tap out. His coach, frustrated by his defiance, storms out of the arena. After the fight, Case runs into Brody, an old friend and fellow fighter. They share a few laughs and memories before Brody invites him to an after party. At the club, Brody is drunk and surrounded by women. When Micah, who works with the reigning champion, walks in, he flirts with her despite being married. She's clearly uncomfortable, and Case tries to remind him of his marriage before walking away. Brody brushes it off and starts talking about signing with the PFC, a promotion that pays big money. He brags about an upcoming $2 million fight in Thailand against the undefeated Caesar. Case warns him that no paycheck is worth the kind of damage Caesar can cause, but Brody laughs it off and asks Case to train with him. Case declines, and the two go their separate ways. Moments later, Case spots two men heading toward Brody suspiciously. He follows them and finds Brody in trouble, caught in a compromising situation with another woman. A fight breaks out, and Case steps in, taking down both attackers before helping Brody escape. The next morning, Brody visits Case and begs him to come along to Thailand. Case refuses at first, revealing that he lost his motivation after his parents' death. But Brody insists, promising to pay him and hinting that this trip could help him find purpose again. Soon after, Case agrees and joins Brody in Bangkok. There, the flashy promoter Hugo introduces the fighters to the press, hyping up the upcoming match between three-time world champion Brody and the undefeated Caesar. When reporters question Hugo about the lack of regulations and Caesar's violent history, the mood changes. One journalist mentions Caesar's assault charges, and Caesar snaps, flipping the table in rage before security rushes in to restrain him. The press room erupts in chaos, and it's clear that this fight will be far more personal than anyone expected. The press conference ends in chaos as Caesar storms off, leaving destruction in his wake. Later, Case heads to the gym to start training, but the coach stops him at the door. The space, he says, is for active fighters only. Case calmly explains he's here to work, not compete, which confuses the trainer since he's supposed to be Brody's coach. While the trainer calls to confirm, Case steps outside. He heads to a scrapyard, gathers some old materials, and begins setting up his personal training area. While he works carefully, measuring, welding, and building his setup, the other fighters laugh and whisper. The trainer watches with growing irritation. Meanwhile, on the way to Thailand, Brody watches old fight videos and starts to look uneasy. Back at the gym, another fighter named Cobra walks in with his crew. Loud, cocky, and reckless, he immediately mocks Case, calling him a clown. Cobra then beats his sparring partner so badly, he knocks him out cold, earning a sharp scolding from the coach. The trainer reminds him no one wants to spar with him because he takes things too far. But Cobra doesn't care. He points straight at Case, challenging him to a spar. The coach refuses, but before things can escalate, Brody walks in with a pizza box, lightening the mood. Case questions why he's staying in a separate hotel, and Brody explains that Case was added to the team last minute. He then introduces him to Maddie, the head trainer, who's clearly not thrilled about the newcomer. They discuss Brody's training plan, but Cobra still wants his spar. Maddie tries to shut it down, but Case quietly agrees, telling Brody to get changed for drills while he handles Cobra in the ring. As the gym gathers around, Brody jokes to Micah that the veteran doesn't stand a chance, but Micah disagrees. Cobra steps into the ring, confident and smirking. The trainer warns him to take it easy, but Cobra's already made up his mind. He launches a flying knee, but Case dodges it with ease. Punches follow, all blocked effortlessly. Cobra tries again, throwing wild kicks, but Case moves like water, calm and precise. Then, with one clean strike, Case lands a knee to the midsection and a brutal punch to the face, sending Cobra crashing to the mat, bloodied and dazed. The gym falls silent. The so-called toughest guy just got destroyed without Case even breaking a sweat. Cobra is rushed to the hospital with a concussion and broken ribs. Maddie and Micah are furious, but Brody just laughs, pretending to scold Case before admitting he loved it. Later, two young fighters look up Case online and are stunned. 42 straight wins, undefeated. The trainer, still annoyed, storms to Brody's hotel and finds him partying with two women instead of training. Furious, he calls Brody out, killing the mood when he points out that one of the girls is actually a man. The party ends awkwardly, and Brody shows up late to training the next morning. Case loses his patience, scolding him for being unprofessional. Maddie tries to calm things down, but also complains that Case's presence is causing tension in camp. Brody stands firm, saying Case stays. It's his team, his camp, his rules. Just then, the door swings open. Hugo walks in. The gym falls silent. He wants to see the man who hospitalized one of his best fighters, the man who broke ribs, crushed pride, and reminded everyone what real power looks like. He recognizes Case instantly, and it's clear there's unfinished business between them. After Cobra's injury, the promoter Hugo offers Case a chance to step in and fight in his place. Surprisingly, Case refuses. Brody can't understand why his trainer would turn down such an opportunity. Meanwhile, Micah confronts Hugo about an earlier incident where he almost crossed a line with her. Todd, one of the younger fighters, volunteers to take Cobra's spot, but Hugo dismisses him, saying he doesn't have time for amateurs. Case then steps in, offering to spar with the boy, promising to go easy on him. Inside the ring, Case lets the kid take his shots without fighting back, but the boy still struggles. Disappointed, Hugo walks out without saying a word. Micah argues that Case would actually be a great addition to the company, but Hugo refuses, saying he's not interested in dealing with a man like him. When she presses further and asks about their past, Hugo snaps, telling her to focus on promoting the upcoming fight and stay out of what doesn't concern her. Back at the gym, Brody still wonders why Case didn't try to impress Hugo, but Case doesn't care. He's focused on preparing the champion. While training, two young fighters, Taj and his friend, approach him, admiring his skill. They ask why he sparred with Taj earlier, and Case says he just wanted the kid to have a chance to prove himself. When they ask him to train them, he refuses at first, then changes his mind, promising to give them a few lessons later. That evening, Case keeps his word. He begins showing the boys basic techniques, how to form a proper fist, throw a punch, and protect themselves. He corrects their stances and demonstrates clean, precise movements. The kids clap in amazement, but he tells them not to rely on applause, to focus on form, distance, and control. Before leaving, he hands them ointment for their bruises and quietly mutters to himself on his way out. Later at the hotel, Brody watches Caesar's past fights and realizes the real danger, that devastating power punch. He knows avoiding it will be key, and hopes Case can help him with that. Maddie, however, looks uneasy, sensing Brody's growing dependence on his new trainer. At the next gym session, reporters swarm Brody with questions. He jokes that the only thing he's nervous about is how much damage he'll do to his opponent. When asked about the club incident, he clarifies that the rumor about Rampage saving him is false. As the press watches, one of them spots Case training and recognizes him, the fighter everyone thought had died in prison. Case is heading out when Micah stops him, teasing him for always walking past her. She makes him comfortable enough to open up, and for the first time, he relaxes. She encourages him to reconsider Hugo's offer, and not just focus on training Brody, but Case insists that's why he's here, to do his job, nothing more. Micah smiles and says, "Fine, if you won't ask me out, then I'll ask you." Micah finally sets a date with Case, asking him to please show up this time. At his room, Taj and a friend help him get ready, cracking jokes while trying to pick the perfect outfit. Before he leaves, they tell him to grab some flowers, a small gesture that might go a long way. At the flower shop, Case meets a cheerful little girl who compliments his bouquet. He smiles and asks where her parents are, then realizes she's Micah's daughter when Micah suddenly appears. The surprise softens into warmth as the three share a light moment. During dinner, Micah apologizes for not mentioning her daughter earlier, explaining she wanted to tell him in person. They talk about the child, and when Micah says her daughter loves karate, Case smiles, clearly moved. Elsewhere, promoter Hugo meets with Brody and his coach, furious at their lack of focus on the upcoming fight. The coach tries to defend them, but Hugo cuts him off, warning that Brody needs to get serious. Back at dinner, Micah opens up about her failed marriage and her struggles to trust again. Case admits his own life feels empty. He doesn't even own a phone. When she brings up his past in prison, he's caught off guard. Micah quickly explains she only looked it up to be careful about who she lets into her life, but Case grows uncomfortable and abruptly leaves. Later, Maddie tells Brody that Case has been seeing Micah and even met her daughter. Brody doesn't take it well. The next day, he challenges Case to spar at the gym. Someone warns the veteran that Brody might be holding a grudge, but Case steps in anyway. The sparring starts controlled, but quickly turns intense. Case lands the first clean hit, but Brody counters with a strong jab that staggers him. Fueled by anger, Brody keeps pressing forward with heavy blows. Case locks his arm, forcing him down. But Brody fights back with knees and wild punches. The veteran regains control with a hard kick to Brody's stomach before the coach breaks it up. Case apologizes, but Brody storms out in anger. Hugo later hears that Case beat one of his fighters and is livid. He orders his assistant to dig up everything about the old fighter, both good and bad. Case focuses on training his young students, pushing them to stay disciplined even when they complain. He teaches them that real strength comes from control, not aggression. Micah visits later to apologize for snooping into his past, saying she truly enjoyed their time together and that her daughter likes him too. She just wants something real, something honest. At the gym, Case walks in on Brody taking pills. When asked, Brody brushes it off as vitamins. Case doesn't push it and instead invites him out for street food. The tension eases as they eat and talk. Case advises him to stay grounded, but Brody says the fight world plays by different rules, ones Case wouldn't survive in. Still, he promises he's committed to training and apologizes for sparring too hard, admitting it was jealousy over Micah. He insists he's changed, focusing on his family and his business in Thailand. Later, he convinces the two trainers to reconcile, and together they begin rebuilding focus and discipline in the gym. Brody trains harder than ever, following Case's balanced methods, strength, endurance, and precision. Soon, officials arrive for a random drug test. Brody grows tense, worried something might show up, but Case tells him to stay calm. Later, he thanks Micah for her kindness and quiet support. Meanwhile, another sparring match turns ugly when young Creech refuses to stop attacking after his opponent taps out, a sign that tempers and pride are beginning to spiral once again. Ga, who's been training alone, steps in to spar with Creech. Calm and confident, she dodges his swings and lands sharp, precise hits that make him stumble. When he charges again, she ends the round with a clean kick to the face and quick follow-up strikes. Then, she helps him up and offers a few words of advice. Meanwhile, Case and Micah share another dinner together. She asks about his family, then quickly apologizes, but he reassures her it's okay. He admits he almost got married once, and she encourages him, saying better things are ahead. Later, at her apartment, she mentions her daughter isn't home. They share a quiet hug before he leaves, though he regrets not staying longer. Back at his place, a knock interrupts his thoughts. It's the promoter's assistant, bringing a PFC fight contract. Case carefully reviews it, crosses out a few unfair terms, and adds his own notes before signing. When Hugo sees the changes, he's furious and orders his team to dig up more dirt on the veteran. During a morning jog, Brody talks about how the fight world often forces people into unethical choices. Later at the gym, everyone watches an old video of Case fighting a police officer, a clip from years ago when he was framed for carrying a weapon. Embarrassed, he shuts the laptop and leaves. Hugo, struggling with publicity and fading fan interest in Brody, realizes he needs a new plan. Soon after, reporters crowd Case's door, demanding answers about the video. Micah steps in, posing as his publicist, and takes control. She even moves him into a better apartment, claiming it's part of his new contract. As he leaves to pack, they share a gentle kiss before closing the door. Back at the gym, a new coach arrives to help Brody with technique, but Case immediately senses something off. During training, the coach goes too hard and accidentally breaks Brody's leg. At the hospital, doctors confirm he'll be out for weeks, missing the fight. When Brody panics about losing his insurance due to steroid use, Case and Maddie reveal they secretly swapped his pills for harmless ones, saving him. Later, Hugo visits Case with a shocking proposal, $1 million fight against the brutal Psycho Caesar. After a moment's hesitation, the veteran accepts. The veteran hesitates for a moment, then accepts the $1 million fight. Soon, every TV network is buzzing about the upcoming showdown. Maddie steps in as his head coach, while the injured Brody offers guidance from the sidelines. Elsewhere, Rampage calls Brody, angry that people are confusing him with the veteran. Taj, feeling betrayed by his mentor's decision to fight, decides to abandon the moral code he once admired. Meanwhile, Micah senses that Brody's injury wasn't an accident. The investigation confirms her suspicion. Hugo had ordered the sabotage. Though tempted to back out, the veteran's team convinces him the best revenge is to win. With everyone rallying behind him, he trains harder than ever, Brody shares vital insights about Caesar's brutal fighting style. On fight night, Hugo and his crew arrive at the arena confident, unaware of what's coming. Micah quits his team and joins the veteran's corner, standing proudly beside him. During the pre-fight photos, inside the locker room, he sits in silence, reflecting on his journey, the pain, the redemption, the fight ahead. Refusing to wrap his hands, he storms into Caesar's prep area, taunting him and confronting Hugo about Brody's injury. Chaos erupts when Caesar loses his temper and attacks. The two collide in a brutal, no-holds-barred battle. Caesar throws the first punches, but the veteran counters with sharp strikes to the ribs and face, even landing a spinning kick. The giant shrugs it off, grabbing and slamming him onto a table. They exchange blows like wild beasts, one fighting for dominance, the other for redemption. Despite being overpowered, the veteran locks Caesar's arm and nearly makes him submit. Caesar escapes, furious, and rips off his gloves and shirt before launching a vicious barrage. Micah watches in terror as the older fighter struggles to stay on his feet. Then, something changes. Fueled by pure will, the veteran drops his gloves and channels his inner calm, his Tai Chi flow. He strikes precisely, driving his knuckles into Caesar's ribs, rupturing something inside. The giant stumbles, clutching his side. The veteran seizes the moment, unleashing a series of powerful punches and kicks before lifting the massive opponent and slamming him to the mat. In one breathtaking sequence, he leaps into a flying double kick, then finishes with a spinning tornado strike that sends Caesar crashing down. The arena explodes with cheers. Micah rushes in and kisses him as the crowd chants his name. Hugo threatens to sue, but the fighter reminds him they have proof he ordered Brody's injury, evidence that could destroy him. Hugo's assistant rushes in with even worse news. They'll have to refund every ticket. The promoter's face turns pale with rage. Meanwhile, the veteran's team surrounds him in triumph, Brody among them, proud, smiling, and grateful that the real fight was finally won. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.